Today, we are going to be talking about the Alien RPG. Now, if you're a huge fan of the Aliens movies and the overall Aliens franchise, and you want to explore that world further within a tabletop game, and you want to experience the dread and the stress and the panic of these movies within a game that you can play out within your own story, you are going to really love the Alien RPG. I bring on Matt and Nathan from the AARPG show to talk all about Alien with me, as they've played Alien, I believe it was 4 times in total, and they keep going back and playing this game because of how good it is. One of the things that actually got this game on my radar for me was hearing about the stress and panic mechanics within Alien and how fitting it is for the sci-fi horror setting that it has. So if that sounds amazing, let's get into this episode and hear all about Alien RPG. Welcome, everyone, to the RPG Goblin. I am your host, Willow, and this is a TTRPG podcast dedicated to exploring TTRPGs because they're really awesome, and I am your host, and I like these games way too much, and so this is why I started the podcast. Intro all over the place, but it's fine. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about Alien RPG, which I am really, really excited about, especially because I am a huge lover of Free League games, and this is one of the coolest Free League games, in my opinion. And to talk about Alien RPG on this episode, I have both Nathan and Matt from AARPG on to, discuss and talk all about it. And if you guys would like to introduce yourselves and tell everyone what you do, where they can find you, and all of that good stuff, please go ahead.
Matt, you want to start with you, and then I'll talk a lot.
Sure. Hi, how's it going? My name is Matt, and I am the co-host of AARPG. And I've had an opportunity so far to play in about 4 Alien games, I think, since we started gaming as a group. Not all of them have been recorded for the podcast, but yeah, it's definitely one of our favorite systems. All right, Nathan.
Yeah, I'm Nathan. I'm the other co-host for the AARPGs. If I remember the name of our own podcast. So we started this podcast. We started recording right around 3 years ago. We didn't start publishing episodes until April 1st, April Fool's Day. That was on purpose. It suits the tone of our show. If you haven't listened, that's your warning. And it's relevant to Alien because we had, when we were thinking about doing this podcast, Matt came up with the idea, and I have, an audio background from a billion years ago. So we started recording, and the first few sessions were basically throwaway. We just we're recording online and making a lot of mistakes. But then we had something that were starting to sound okay, and then they got a lot better. So our initial plan was to start with Twilight 2000. That was going to launch, but then we had like a bunch of Alien episodes just sitting there, and they're really funny and really exciting, and we had just a great time playing the game and recording. It's like, it would be a shame if nobody got to hear this, because it's great. The audio quality sucked for the first 3 episodes. It was bad, but people, even almost 3 years later, people are still listening to it and commenting about it and whatnot. So that's kind of where we've discovered we had a little bit of we had a lot of chemistry that could translate into a podcast. So we got our teeth with Free League stuff.
That's great, and that's awesome because Free League's great. And yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, I almost forgot that bit. So the AARPGs.com, the AARPGs on YouTube, on Twitter, the AARPGs on Threads, and I'm under my own name, something Blue Sky. You can find me. But all your favorite podcatchers too, Apple, Spotify, whatever. But
yeah, perfect.
Yeah, and we have merch. So not that you want to buy it, but if you feel like it, cool.
And links for all of that will be in the description of this episode too, to make it all easy and stuff. And just before we start actually getting a bit more into the Alien RPG stuff, for everyone who doesn't know, what does AARPG stand for?
Oh, there's a tongue twister.
Yeah, the Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers. So it's a play on AARP. If you're not from the U.S., it's AARP is an organization for people that are close to retirement age to help them provide services and things like that. So I figured out, early this year, I was like, we have like a bunch of German and Swedish and Danish and listeners from around the world, and they have no idea what that joke is. So the whole joke is that we borrowed our name from a old folks association.
I think that's honestly really great. I love the idea for it so much.
We take ourselves super seriously here.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course. The most serious. And no, I think that's great though. I am all on board for not taking yourself seriously in your own content. I think it's great. Just have a fun time with it. No, yeah. I love that so much. And I think Alien though is like a great one to have you guys on for, especially since that's kind of where you had your roots. And you've actually, have either of you run Alien?
I've run it three out of the 4 times we played. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I was watching a bit of I think the most recent one, and I was seeing that I can't remember their name.
That one.
Yeah, Tyr was running that one, and so I'm like, okay, I should probably confirm that one of you guys running.
Yeah, and it was hard to let him take that over because I felt it was kind of like my thing, but he did a great job with it. He's a good GM, so.
Yeah, it's like, this is my game mommy. He's like, this is my game. This is the one that's close to my heart. And so I think that's really cool though that you guys have played it so often. And so was the first time that you did play it on like for the podcast, or did you play it before that?
No, we
played it in the regular gaming group, right? So there was a Tuesday. The podcast kind of generated out of a Tuesday night game. That got started a little bit before the pandemic, right? And I kind of joined a little bit later, so right around the time of the pandemic. And did we play? We played Aliens after the D&D one, right? The Against the Giants,
right? Yeah. So I was running because a lot of us, during when the pandemic started, a lot of us were forced to work from home and. Us, having professional jobs is hard to have like a regular game because we're just like always working. So we carved out a Tuesday night or 2 hours where we could actually get together and connect and play and laugh and drink and everything else. So really, that was like that kept my sanity when things were like really really bad. So I ran. Some D&D 5e like module stuff, and we were just having fun with it, and then I had picked up Alien because Free League at the beginning of the pandemic had actually given out free PDF copies of Forbidden Lands and some other stuff. And I started going through that, and it's like, wow, this is awesome. So when they did Alien, I was like, okay, I've got to grab that.
Yeah, I'd have to have that one.
Have to have that one. And so I said, hey, do you guys want to try this? And everybody was on board because, I was the one running. And like, whatever you want to run, we're cool with it. So I ran the, Hadley's Hope, just out of the back of the book. And that was great. It was fun. We kind of got into the whole panic and stress spiral, which I think is just such a great fun mechanic, and everybody kind of played into it, which is good. So when we finished that, and during that is when we were talking about starting the podcast, and we said, okay, well let's see what we can get done. And so we just tried recording remotely and through some trial error eventually figured it out. But so it started with Hadley's Hope, and then we went into Destroyer of Worlds, which is another published adventure.
That's great. I will definitely ask some more questions on the published adventures, because I think that's always, especially for people like dipping their toes into other TTRPGs. I think those are always great, where it's like, you don't have to worry about actually having to create your own world or create your own story. You can just run something that's pre-written and only worry about mechanics. It's great. And so for people who are listening that may not know what the Alien RPG is, would you like to explain what it is?
You want to do that, Matt, or you want to?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's basically it's Free League's sort of gamification of the Alien franchise, right? So it's one of the everybody, I don't know about everybody, but pretty sure everybody who's listening has watched the movies, and it's just sort of their adaptation of that world. And it's not, what's kind of interesting is you can jump right in and yeah, it's got aliens and colonial marines and everything, but they have taken sort of all the little things from the movies that may only get a little bit of attention and built like an entire game world around it, like fleshed out all of these corporations that you just kind of hear about, right? And the politics, war going on between different so they've made a much more complex world building sort of effort with this game to really expand it out, that if you want to have aliens in it, you can. And if you don't, there's all kinds of other things you can experience in this universe that isn't just stuff right from the movies. So you can kind of, if you want that, you can get it. And if you want to create something completely different, you can kind of, there's a lot more to do than just bug hunting.
Yeah, no, that's... I love that, and it's kind of funny to think of the idea of like, let's play Alien without any of the aliens.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, Matt, right?
Yes, it is. No spoilers.
Wink, wink. No spoilers. But so yeah, and we interviewed Andrew Gasca, who wrote all these Alien books, and his specialty is really handling other people's IP with care. So basically, everything that's in these books is approved by the IP holders, and so he worked not just from the movies, but from the comic books and from other written fiction about the Aliens universe. So there are a lot of sources that he drew from, and it's stuff that I had no idea existed out there. But there's groups, if you just search for LV426 on like Twitter or Reddit, you'll find like dedicated alien groups, fan people that are really into the whole mythology, which might lead to another story later on that we can talk about or not. But it's a pretty well developed universe.
Yeah, no, that's really impressive. And that's something, Free League has like some amazing original games, but also like the stuff that they've adapted from actual IPs. I've never played any of them yet. And so like, I think that's a crime, but I've heard amazing things about Alien. I know that they're doing the whole Walking Dead universe stuff that people are pretty excited about. Blade Runner, I think, as well. Like all kinds of things that they have just done a really fantastic job with. And with Alien, do they actually use their like core Year Zero system with it?
Yeah. So everything comes from the Year Zero engine, which was started out with Mutant Year Zero, and everything else is kind of a derivative of that. With each game having its own tweaks to fit the type of stories told. So Alien being a mostly horror game is really built around creating the suspense and creating that tension and creating those potentially horrific moments. Whereas like Tales from the Loop and Twilight 2000, they have different goals, different games. So they're not, the Year Zero engine is pretty flexible, that they can just with a few minor tweaks, they can create a system that works for a different genre, which I think has been pretty great for
Mhm.
for Free League. And it's also great, I think, for our players because it was pretty easy to go from Alien to Twilight 2000. So
Yeah, you're already familiar enough with the base system that
yeah,
even the minor tweaks, because I know you mentioned, and we'll get into this later, like the panic and the stress, which I think are specific to Alien, and I have heard amazing things about. Like every time that I go onto it's like the I'm begging you to play anything but D&D group, I always see people talking about Alien and panic and stress mechanics, and that just makes me really, really excited. But so with Alien, it's supposed to be a horror TTRPG,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yes.
How do you think is it a good horror TTRPG? Do you think it does a good job at being one?
I think it does. I think, as we said, the mechanics lend well to it. Now,
Mhm.
we've only played up to this point Colonial Marine games.
Mhm.
So in some ways, if you watch the first Alien movie versus the second Aliens, there's a very different feel between, just scientists with wrenches, and a blowtorch versus, people toting like big automatic weapons. So
Yeah.
in some ways, I would say yes. I think it does. The mechanics are there. I think that we've had a lot of stress. I think the game that we're actually releasing now, it's probably our least funny game. Like,
Mhm.
we don't joke around a lot, and I think it's because everyone was really stressed out playing, because it's a lot of tunnels and tight corners, and and so if it kind of quiets down the table, that's probably one's
Yeah.
actually, you could translate some really worry. And I think if you took that to the next step to play like regular colonists or just regular people, I think, without all these big automatic weapons and grenade launchers, it would really be, I think that would be even more stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, our first game was actually not Colonial Marines. The Hadley's Hope was a bunch of normies running around
Were
and getting
we?
chased. Yeah, yeah. It was a long time ago. He done
Oh, okay.
It was years ago.
Yeah, I don't remember. I thought we stole an APC. It's the only APC that's ever survived anything in any of our Alien stories. So
yeah, yeah.
I don't know why I thought we were military.
No.
I guess we
So
were just
that's
thieves.
You're just trying to survive because you're getting chased around.
Yeah.
by a bunch of big monsters. Yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really good because I've definitely seen a lot of people go back and forth on like horror TTRPGs. If they actually do work, there needs to be a lot of buy-in, and like the mechanics do have to.
That's the key. Is that you have to get the players buy-in. And that's with a lot of the mechanics in here. If you are playing just super safe all the time and not kind of playing into some of those horror tropes, you're probably not going to have as much fun.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking about bringing this to your group, you really got to because I think really going from the culture shock was going from this 5e D&D game to Alien, and there's a lot
Honestly
of
different.
yeah, and a lot of I want to roll for stealth. I want to roll for perception. And just you got to kind of like get them out of you don't have to roll all the time. If there's a chance of meaningful failure, I'll tell you to roll, and only one of you is going to roll. I'm not going to have all 6, 7, 8 of you roll because then you get 100% chance of success there. So there has to be a chance of failure. There has to be some risk. So you kind of have to tailor that experience and just prep them ahead of time that you're not going to be rolling for all the time, and you're going to be, if you're rolling for stealth, only the person with the lowest stealth is going to roll. If you're rolling for perception, only the person with the best perception observation is going to roll. So you just kind of beat those bad habits out of them.
Yeah.
And some of it too is just making sure you have that discussion with the group before you play. I mean, it's like if everyone went out to the movies and we're like, well, we're going to go see a scary movie, and one person's like, well, I don't like scary movies. Well, then maybe you don't go. That person shouldn't, or you don't go. You go see something else, right? Because if you
kick them out of the group.
Yeah. If you got to be in the mindset to want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
If you're going to go, if you think it's going to be like a rom-com and it's a horror slasher, you're not going to have a good time. But I think so letting people know and getting that kind of, hey, we're all going to have fun. This is going to be, we're going kind of horror, or unless you're our group. And as the GM, I say I'm doing a really dark and scary horror game. And they're like, no, we're going to completely turn it into a parody of itself. So you never know what's going to happen. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
No, I think that's so great though, and yeah, that's something I talked with someone on the show. I think it was in the Making Mistakes in TTRPGs episode with Curtis, and he was trying to run a game of Mothership, which is sci-fi horror TTRPG, all of that, and it ended up like failing so bad because no one was buying into the actual idea that, hey, this is supposed to be a stressful, risky situation where things are dangerous and all of that, and a horror game. And so yeah, buy-in is really, really important. So thank you for going on those rants, because that was great. It's so important. Like, keep it in mind, please.
Yeah, not every game is for every table. So,
for sure. No.
Yeah. So, I think we being jaded senior citizens, we kind of like going into those dark places where things are ugly and messy and brutal and laugh about it.
I mean, makes sense why you like Free League games. I mean, that's pretty much like the theme across all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I love that though. So, Alien is supposed to though be, it's a horror game, but it's supposed to be dangerous and risky. And I'm assuming that people should expect character death and really bad things to happen. Have you encountered that in any of your playthroughs so far?
Yeah, definitely.
The smiles that went on your guys' face.
Yeah, and I would like, before I ran the first session, I was like, okay, you guys are gonna like die like all the time. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. And I really, I don't think anybody died in their first playthrough. Maybe some injuries, but in our first podcast version, we had some death and some maiming,
dismemberment.
Yeah. And it's funny because that was 3 years later, we still joke about it. Like a lot of stuff that happened in that first pre-podcast are stuff that still get just running gags that we still reference in our later shows. Because if you just start like listening to us now, we're gonna you're gonna hear all the stuff about rhino-sized aliens hiding in the ceiling, and you're gonna hear stuff about my leg and Sean, ever since that first recording, he played a Gunny Sergeant Mason who met a tragic end, and every character he's played since then has been an iteration, some sort of Mason
relative or something. Yeah.
So it really stuck with us.
Well, I think so from games, people coming from other systems, right? Like, I think Nathan might disagree, but you can die playing D&D 5th edition, right? It can happen, right? But it tends to not be such a surprise. At least the times that, you kind of get someone gets worn down. Remember, I think what's interesting about Aliens, the way the mechanics is, it's not overly deadly, but it can happen very fast, right? So if folks aren't used to it, many of the monsters use a card system. So unlike, and I think Dragonbane is similar, right? So it's not just, a monster does 1d4 points of damage. The monster picks a card, and that card might just be drive spike through your head, you're dead.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And then you're just dead, right? And so that can be a little shocking for people who have played with games where there's like, oh, I've got a cleric and I've got 3 death rolls, and and so with Sean's particular character in that first series, this was just a firefight, and then in one roll he was gone.
Yeah.
And so it was that quickness, that sudden shock on, and it was that same battle where we had someone who was severely injured. And so there's just this like, and this plays through and kind of bleeding in and out of here into like a lot of Free League games. So you take that with Dragonbane. Twilight 2000 has that same high consequence for violence. right? So you really want to, for all your players who like to just bust down the door and fight everything, these games give you some real pause on maybe we should run, maybe we should talk, maybe we should actually surrender and live to fight another day, or different style. If you just try to kick the door down on everything in these games, it you can if you want, but as Nathan likes to say, consequences.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of games where it really it is very easy to die because you really just have the hit points are really the only kind of consequence. Whereas with a lot of the free games, there's other things like stress and panic and running out of oxygen and stuff like that.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
No, and of course, like the injury tables too. If you, because I don't know how they work in Alien specifically, but in Dragonbane, anytime that you go down and you come back up, you roll on the major injury table, and it's like, oh, I survived, but now I think one of the characters ended up having like broken ribs and had like a or Banes to any like strength or whatever checks, and it's like, oh, there is an actual consequence of getting into that fight, going down, not being ready, and now you have to deal with the next 5 days. You can't make a strength roll without that Bane. Coming from I started getting into these games by playing D&D 5e, and coming from that into the Free League world, it is a much different experience, and it's not for everyone, but I think it is fun to actually have tactics and consequences to every single thing you do, and that second thought. Like, I think it changes the way that you approach the game, and I just think it's so cool.
Well, and think about all the movies that we love, whether they're like if you're like a Star Wars person or Marvel, Luke got his hand cut off by his dad, and Thor lost his eye, and his favorite axe, his hammer got destroyed, and so those are all things that if you're playing D&D, there's like really you have to basically the DM has to take the player aside and say, okay, I think there's this really cool idea for your character. What if I take your eye? And like, I like my character whole, please. But yeah, so I'm looking at the critical injuries table here for Alien, and there's a lot of broken hand, can't use hand, knocked out teeth, -2 manipulation, which is like a kind of a personality type role. The one that we used was a crushed skull. And the effect is your story ends here. So that's another thing we say a lot is, your story ends here.
Yeah, no, that's so good though.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
And again, like it is like you said, it is quick. It just happens. It's in an instant. And it is so important to know what game you're getting into, but it does open up those possibilities to where like you don't have to bring the player aside. You all agree to play this game to where it's really dangerous. That there's this injury table. That really dramatic things can happen to your character that's gonna suck. And you don't have to it's still nice to like check in sometimes, but but you don't have to worry about like, oh, this is like a totally different shift, dramatic change to the entire game. No, it's built into it. That's already there. You all know what you're agreeing to, and that's pretty crazy. And so
I think it's pretty liberating too, because it can really, if you don't just like outright die, if you get like a temporary or permanent injury, you can actually make that part of your character and take it into some places that maybe you didn't think you were going to go, but it's a lot more just interesting, a lot more flavor.
Yeah, and I can assume it also, bringing it, having like embodying those things as the character and like actually using that to develop, if you're playing longer term games, that has then, I guess I wouldn't say reward, but payoff. You do play off these however many days to recover from this injury, and now this is something you still have. I know in the Dragonbane game, my character got a huge scar across the face from getting cleaved by an axe.
That's cool.
Yeah, I know, it's cool. And so like when if we pick that back up again, that's now a new addition to my character, and so like it has that benefit in the longer term game. And so do you think that it's more fun to play Alien as a longer term story, or do you think it is better to play in like kind of short burst one shots?
We've done what I call, like, most of what we play are short, like less than 20 sessions. And I'd say they're definitely not one shots, and they're not really long campaigns.
Long enough for a story, though.
yeah, at least a story arc. So I think it suits that, because there's one thing. If you'll get the Alien book, you'll see that there's a campaign mode and a cinematic mode, and we've been just doing the. We started out doing the cinematic, and now we're doing, I guess, kind of more of a campaign mode. But in the cinematic mode, you have story points that you get to use to affect certain outcomes in the game. And or a campaign, you kind of not level up, but you get experience points that you can use to boost your skills and buy new talents and things like that. But the cinematic mode is, I think, is probably the prime way to play Alien for me. And that's how all the published adventures are written. Or they're all written as cinematic mode with a bunch of pre-gen characters and kind of the motivations baked into the character that change as a first act, second act, third act. And for each act, the game mother will hand out these motivation cards for each character. So you may find out that your character is a little bit more than what you thought. At in the second or third act, and it'll change how you act. And then there may be some PvP, which some people are also not really fond of. So I think it's cool and dramatic, and I think it's a really pretty fun time at the table when that comes about naturally. But for some people, it's like a couple of our friends, like James, it's like a deal breaker for him. He doesn't like PvP at all. So
yeah, and it ties into some of the themes. And if you watch the movies, there is a lot of internal strife. With the first movie, of course, you have the betrayal of the android, right? And sort of they flip that around. You have the crooked business person, and so the cards, these motivations are kind of cool, because what you do is you get those points after each act. So it's broken down in act. You actually, like, did you play a character? Did you advance your goal? And the way when they're written, they are often written where one person's goal is not in line with maybe the best outcome for everybody else in the
survival.
Group. Right. and so, I think, and we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, I think we have played pre-gens almost every time
I mean, not the one we're doing right now.
Okay.
But yeah, no, actually, no, it's 50-50. So Have this hope and Destroy Worlds, those are pre-gens. But when I ran that Clone and Marines story at the previous Geek Weekend, that was all you guys all made characters for that.
Yeah, and so when you use the pre-gens, they've got the authors weave a nice tale of potentially tragic cross goals, which adds to the stress of the play. So if you're playing one of their games, that's great. That's already got it in there. But if you're a GM and you want to be devious, it's not wrong. Go ahead. Your very goal might be to do something that ends up not being very good for somebody else.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that's actually, I've never watched the Alien movies, but I want to so bad, especially now knowing about Alien and all of that. I really want to. But I have actually played a board game called Nemesis that's based off of Alien. And what's interesting is that it had that same exact thing where you would randomly draw these cards for motivations. And you would have like a personal motivation. And then I think there's like a group, like it was a bunch of different things. But the big one was that there was personal motivations. And it could be stuff like you have to kill player B. You have to kill this person, or you have to set the course to a different planet, or you have to. One may have been like set fire to something, like destroy something, like those really fun things. And I love how that that's my big experience with Alien so far, and the Alien RPG actually having that included in it too is really, really cool. And I love the opportunities for PvP, because that is kind of, again, it's a lot of personal conflict, personal stories. It's high stress situation. No one's having a good time.
So I actually have some agenda cards here from one of the series. I can tell you which one, and I can tell you whose it is. But to hell with the others. They are flawed like all of humanity. The so-and-sos are truly perfect something you've always aspired to. You deserve perfection as well. Make the so-and-sos see that. I guess it's
Well, that was vague, Nathan.
Yeah. So, but it's.
Well, I'll tell you. Light spoiler. I will tell you for that. One of the characters in our Destroyer of Worlds. So the card doesn't tell you right away, right? So the first card doesn't tell you right away. I will tell you that one of the characters was infected from the beginning of the story, and it doesn't come out till much, much later because I could tell through the progression of the cards, the original card that you get isn't, oh, you're infected, right? It's just got like some fairly innocuous, like, oh, hey, you should do this while you're role playing, like
So
throw in this
when
kind
did
of
you
thing.
know? When did you know that you're infected? Because I was like hinting at stuff.
So I guess it was me. There's more spoiler.
Sorry,
there's more spoiler.
Revealing the
I mean, no idea what character it was. Matt, how did you feel when you? No. So I think that by the second act, I started getting suspicious, and the only reason is because it's Nathan. And Nathan likes to mess with people, and so but no, so the card was literally like, oh yeah, like complain about like a sore shoulder and back and stuff like that. And so most of the game, I was just, a lot of the people just consider my character just this whiny complainer and all this, because I'm always talking about how my back hurts and my shoulder and all this stuff.
So
and like,
good.
And the whole time, of course, it hurts because I've got something growing in me. So it's like, so it wasn't really it's not until you get the last card that I was leaning towards it, but it was definitely something that you're like, oh my goodness, right? It's like the whole, and that is a theme that kind of, I think. So yeah, no. So those motivation cards are a good another good piece of the mechanics in the game. That because immediately all your players are going to be looking at the table at each other, going, "All right, which one of you is going to stab me in the back?" So there's another mood setter, I think, that fits with the genre and that storyline.
Yeah, I love that, and I love it as well that it's like how you were mentioning that it starts out as like, here's how to kind of role play your character, like just like elements that you can add to your character versus like you are just infected. That doesn't give anything. Yeah. No, I like that a lot, and I would like to start delving into like how the actual character creation works. What are the elements of creating a character and like getting these cards and like getting ready to, I guess, play this game.
So if you're not doing one of the pre-written cinematic scenarios, character creation is really a lot like any other freely game. So there's no life path like there is in Twilight 2000, but you're given a certain number of points and you spread them between. Let's see. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like you pick your career, right? You pick a career, right? I think that's the first step.
Okay, if you say so. All right, I'll give you some editing stuff because it's been a while since we recorded the podcast, or I'm editing and releasing now. We recorded like a year ago.
Oh, yeah. No, that's
So
fair.
it's a little bit of
Yeah, no, I'm cheating, Nathan. I'm looking at page something XX, so we call page
oh, yeah,
31.
yeah.
Yeah, so picking your career, and I think that's like if you're playing a civilian game, it's like scientist or engineer or stuff like
Mhm.
that, ship's crew member. And when you're playing the military version, it's picking what's called an MOS,
Oh.
which I should know what it stands for, but I don't. But that's a term from the military. That's what job you do.
Mhm.
And so, it could be like a number or a name. And so that's like in Aliens, it's like you're I'm a recon specialist or
Mhm.
I'm a sniper or something like that. So you pick a career, and that kind of has a series of modifiers to your character, right? And then, like Nathan said, you pick your
Yeah, so
attributes.
you have it's like 14 points for your attributes, and it's just 4 attributes. So the strength, wits, empathy, and agility. So
Mhm.
I think that's the same as most free league games. You get a career, and that gives you access to specific career talents.
Mhm.
And also, if you're playing an android, they get bonuses to 2 different attributes, pretty big ones. And there's a couple different ways to play an android. You can be kind of an out in the open android,
Mhm.
or you can be a secret android.
Ooh.
So,
Fun.
uh, yeah, and that's again, that's something you have to kind of get buy-in for. But with the secret androids is pretty neat because they don't get affected by stress, and they can't use stress.
Oh,
But before
interesting.
you reveal that you're an alien, you actually you can. So so until your status as an android, you play just like everybody else, so nobody else at the table knows that you're an android.
Mhm.
And
That's
then
fun.
yeah, but once you're revealed, then you don't do stress and panic like everybody else.
So interesting. I like that they have that in that. And so is that specifically a career type thing, or is that like a variation that you can do?
That's just if you want to play one.
That's if you just want to have
Yeah.
fun.
So you still have a career just like everybody else.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it has some other uh drawbacks to them too. Yeah, they can't. So I guess this is probably where we, as far as character creation, that's really just that picking talents, and you have to get a certain number of points for skills. Then you
Standard
pick
stuff,
out
yeah.
a personal agenda. You pick out who your buddy is, who your rival is in the group.
Oh,
Um,
I like those.
and so, but the Android stuff kind of leads right into the stress and panic stuff. So if
Mhm.
we want to talk about that, we can talk about that now. If up to you. Or do you have
Yeah.
questions about character creation or
So the personal agenda is like the motivation thing where you get like the
right?
cards that give you,
Yeah,
the different stuff over
well, it's
time.
like a
Okay.
one kind of overall thing, not like a
Mhm.
by act type
Okay.
thing.
Oh
So
yeah, if you're doing character creation versus
right,
the gotcha,
yeah.
gotcha. And those I imagine are a bit more straightforward versus, building up to it.
Pretty straightforward, and it really I guess depends on the player too. Like
Mhm.
some of the players in our group will write you a 14-page backstory, and some people will. I'm a pretty concise when it comes to that kind of thing. So you can get pretty elaborate in that if you
Mhm.
want to, but there's the mechanics around it are really based on just a experience for the session and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Do they have like ones that you pick from in the book, or is it something that that they have you create?
They just leave it pretty wide open.
Mhm.
And there are, of course, examples in the adventure in the back they could get some inspiration from
Mhm.
for
Which
the
again, love
cinematics.
written stuff.
Yeah, yeah. But in the character creation session, they talk about the difference between campaign agendas versus the cinematic type.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I like that. Those are cool.
Yeah.
Because I get that's almost like the idea that they're doing in D&D with like flaws, personality bonds, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like to give that kind of flavoring, but I feel like they make it too complicated. Just like stick it, just have one thing to kind of like be a grounding point. I like that a lot.
And I like having the. Oh, sorry. Go
No, no, you're all good. I was just saying, I like that if it's one thing, it leaves a lot more open that you can develop whatever the character is going to be versus kind of sticking to, oh, here's a flaw, but then when you actually start to play the character, hey, I don't actually like this flaw anymore.
Yeah. And of course, agendas can change. And buddies and rivals is just something that I've tried to bring into other games too, because it's instead of like, oh, y'all meet in a tavern, which can be perfectly fun sometimes. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have a buddy and a rival in the group, that there's something that kind of grounds you with the group, and you can kind of helps you build a story are actually together besides just being in a Marine squad. So
yeah, and character relationships, like when you then get into actually playing the game and role playing, if you're like, okay, this person's my buddy and this person's my rival, to whatever extent those are, it's like, okay, I know this is a friend, basically. I know I can have a friendly relationship and do all that, which is something I really loved when I talked to Adam about Twilight 2000 was the buddy rival relationship.
Yeah.
Does that, is there any like mechanical tie-ins for those as well? Because I think there was in Twilight, but I can't remember what they were.
I think it's similar. I think it's similar in Twilight 2000 where you get you could get extra points, or if you're doing experience for like aiding a buddy or meeting a goal. It's not super hard fast set of rules for it.
Yeah. And I like that too. It's kind of loose. You can, aiding a buddy could be, actually like medical aid or could be helping them out, stuff like that. And so it makes
risking something for them.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and for folks who are not big on PvP or anything, a rivalry doesn't, just throwing it out there, a rivalry doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? Not necessarily. A rivalry could just be two high performers who like to see who can, I take it from, what was it? It's Legolas and
Gimli.
And Gimli, during the battle at Helm's Deep, right? They're having a competition to see who can kill more orcs, right? They're still friends. They just like bragging rights, and so
exactly.
You could have a rivalry, that's more based around sort of like performance. It doesn't have to be nasty. It doesn't have to be
competitive.
Right. You don't want to do like our group where everyone picked, I think, the sergeant, same person as their rivalry.
Yeah, like the sergeant of the squad, like everybody picked him as a rival. So yeah, it was just
that's so funny.
Yeah.
No, that's
you gotta have thick skin every time we did character introductions.
Oh my God.
It's like, I like long walks in the park, shooting my smart gun, and forget the sergeant. Everybody's intro had to end with, I hope the sergeant dies. Comes around, you got 7 players, you get to Kupo. He's like, gosh, guys.
That's so good, but like, and because you can have it not be, oh, I hate you, and it can be different types of rivalries, it still keeps it interesting. Still, like, it would be so funny to be that person who just almost like gets picked on. It's like
he missed session 0 or the pre-session 0, and we decided that he would be the sergeant for him. He did not want to play that character. He was like, hey, who's going to be in charge? Let's make Kupo in charge.
But he really went into. He created a very unlikable character.
Oh yeah, he leaned into it.
Yeah. Which is good, which we knew he would do, and yeah, he lived up to it.
Yeah, and I love that as well with like some of these horror TTRPGs. 10 Candles does it, and it seems like Aliens does it too, to where like you don't have to play a good person. Like you can play people that kind of suck, like it can
That's
be a
good
bit
for us.
All of our games, really. Actually, except for Twilight 2000, those are actually mostly good people. Mostly.
Mostly good people. No, I love that so much, man. I want to play so bad. I see that it's like on sale right now for like Prime Day. I'm like,
Yeah, I think like
oh,
40% off or something.
yeah.
It's totally worth it.
It looks, man, it looks so good. Every time I see it, I went to like Ohio a few months ago, and I went to my favorite game store, and I saw it on the shelf, and I'm like, I could just get it now. I didn't, but I could have, and I regret it.
Yeah. If you want to, I actually have a 20% off coupon from the Free League store that
Oh,
you can have, because
absolutely.
I already used it, and but I use a different one, and that'll give you the PDF also.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely, when I do plan on getting it, and when I do, I want to get it from the actual Free League store because I want the PDF. I
Yeah,
play mostly online. It's just easier that way of like, hey, here's the PDF, guys. Look at that. I've got my own book. I want my physical books. They look
yeah.
nice. But no, I would, yes, I would be very much down for that if you'd like to share that.
Sure.
But no, that's awesome. I am really excited to try this game one day. But yeah, I think though you mentioned getting into the stress and panic mechanics, which
Yeah.
in my mind is like one of the big things that makes Alien like stand out
Hmm.
are these mechanics. So
Yeah. So
uh
stress is another stat.
hey, it is time for our midpoint break. Afterwards, we are going to be getting into the stress and panic mechanics within Alien, so make sure to stick around. And first, I want to say, hey, I hope that you're enjoying listening to this episode. Currently, the RPG Goblin has a goal in November to hit 1,000 listens during the entire month of November, which is absolutely insane, and that is why I need your help. So please make sure to listen to the show, share it with your friends, and leave a review for it if you enjoy it. Any of that really helps push us towards this goal so that we can have an awesome TTRPG party where we will have giveaways, guests, and tons of fun. I also want to remind everyone that the RPG Goblin does have a Discord server that is still open to the general public. In this Discord server, it is just starting. We only have a small group of people, but all the people there are obsessed with TTRPGs, and if you want to talk about these games with people who also love them, please join the Discord server and chat, and also say hi, because I am more than willing to start a discussion about how cool the panic and stress mechanics are within Alien or any other TTRPG mechanic, because I just really want to talk about these games. So yes, please make sure to join the RPG Goblin Discord server. The link is in the description of this episode, along with it is on my link tree in all of my social medias. For today's midpoint promo, we have the Unnatural One podcast, a 5th edition actual play podcast. And I just want to say that Unnatural One is super, super cool. Specifically, they are super sweet because they are featuring the RPG Goblin as their ad space for the entirety of November to help us push towards the 1,000 goal. So I have to say, please, please, please go check them out and let's listen to their promo to see what they're all about so that you can go to their show and give them all the love and support.
It is I, Bertold, the podcasting warlock. I have once again been employed by the Unnatural One podcast to boost our numbers. My infernal magics have coalesced and brought us to this moment. An ad. Join our fearful heroes as they journey through a godless, broken land to reclaim their ancestral homes and from the forces of otherworldly chaos. Our 5th edition actual play podcast features a seasonal rotation of DMs, and those willing to consign themselves to the dark coven that is our Patreon will also be granted access to a wonderful catalog of one-shots, AMAs, and even a Discord server. If you enjoy the dark allure of fantasy violence with a sprinkle of dramatic storytelling, be sure to sample Unnatural One wherever you enjoy podcasts. We upload every Tuesday, even on holidays. We don't get time off, please.
You mentioned getting into the stress and panic mechanics, which in my mind is like one of the big things that makes Alien like stand out are these mechanics. So
So stress is another stat, kind of like that you collect. You start with you would usually start with 0 stress, and as things happen, the GM would just hand out stress points. So the first time you see like a dead body, or if you see an alien, or first time you're in a firefight, you get a stress, and in the game mechanics that they use different types. So the dice, they're all D6s, but there's if you go out and buy the actual dice, or if you're looking at them in Found Your Roll20, there's black dice and yellow dice. The black dice are your dice, so you get your base dice from your attribute and your skill, and then you get yellow dice from stress. So. Ooh. So say I have a point of stress and I am going to shoot my gun at something. So I roll all my black dice and I roll all my stress dice. If I have only one, I have one yellow die. So I can get a success from that. So that stress can actually, you can not roll any successes on all your base dice, but get a success on your stress dice and then succeed in the roll. But there's another face on that yellow die. It's a face hugger. And if you roll that face hugger, that's when you make a panic roll.
Ooh.
So as you're going along, as the story's going, you're collecting these extra stress dice, and so you're making these wild successes. And with Alien, the more successes, the better, because you can use those for extra damage or for doing stunts, like making somebody drop their weapon or other things. You can for extra successes, more than one. But as you can imagine, the more stress dice you have, the higher chance of you getting a face hugger. And that's when you roll on the panic table. Ooh. And you add your current stress level to your panic roll, and then there's this little chart. It starts out pretty innocuous. 1 to 6 is you're keeping it together. You manage to keep your nerves in check barely. That's 1 to 6. So if you only have one stress, chances are you're going to be just fine. And then it goes to nervous twitch, your stress level and the stress level of all friendly PCs in short range of you increase by 1. So if you get more stressed, everybody around you gets more stressed.
Which is super, it's really realistic, right? They talk about like panic spreads.
Yeah.
You ever seen the old thing? You see someone running, you're like, I don't know what they're running from, but I'm going to run too.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, so yeah, it is that's another good horror sort of tension mechanic in there. Like, somebody else makes a, failure. I think one of ours was someone, you dropped a weapon or something.
Yeah.
Or something like in the middle of the quiet hallway, and so everybody freaks out because we're trying to be quiet. There's this clack, on the ground,
Oh, and that tension too. And I love how, again, that like the mechanics support the tension and that it, slowly builds. Ooh, and it comes to something too, like the actual
Yeah, and it becomes it becomes a spiral. Like basically, the more you get stressed, the more stress everybody else gets around you, because you keep making these panic rolls and making everybody collectively more stressed, which maybe makes you super effective at some of the things that you're trying to do. but then again, you may succeed at something and still have to panic. There's other side effects too. Like if you're firing a full burst, you use all your ammo and you have to reload. I was talking about the androids when they're pretending to be human and none of the other players know that they're an android. They're making stress and panic rolls just like everybody else. But once it's revealed, then they can't use any stress and they don't panic. But one of the easiest ways to get stress is something that you'll recognize from Dragonbane, is pushing your rolls.
Oh, it's got pushing rolls in it. Okay, that's great. Yeah. That's really good.
A lot of the Freely games have pushing rolls. So if I fail at something and I don't roll any facehuggers, any panic, then I can re-roll all of my dice, or maybe I succeeded, but I want more successes. I can re-roll all the dice that didn't succeed by pushing the roll, but you have to take a stress die for that.
Yeah. I like that.
So my strategy as a GM was like basically if they did like anything, It's like, are you gonna push that?
It's very pushy about pushing rolls.
Yeah. I was a push
it's
pusher.
just offering it as an option, I'm just letting you know that you can.
And they
first one is free.
Yeah, they leaned into it. They followed my direction, and we had a better game for it.
Exactly.
So,
like the mechanics are there for a reason. Why not use them? Yeah, it's building up the stress and it's making it more likely you can panic and all of these things. But that's what the game is for. That's what you're playing the game for.
Yeah.
If I wanted to play an Alien game and not have to worry about being stressed or panicked, I would convert something else to Alien. Like, I'm playing this system because it's got these mechanics. Yeah, let's push the rolls. Let's get stressed out. Let's panic.
Yeah, I think if you're getting ready to host folks for like the first time, they've never played it. I kind of my analogy for it is like, look, if you play D&D, as you play, your character gets better and better and stronger and more experienced, and you do all kinds of awesome things. Aliens, your character will never be better than the moment they hand you that sheet. It's all downhill from there. Right? That's it. That is the best version of you you're ever going to be, is in that moment before you start playing. And then after that, it's and so it is a very different mindset, right? I mean, look, if you watch horror movies, usually by the end of the movies, people aren't doing so good, even the people that survive, right? And so they've just gone. Yeah. And so no party walks out at the end of a cinematic Aliens experience like nicer than they were going in, right? There's pieces missing, there's people drooling, there's a lot of talking to themselves, it's a whole beautiful mess.
Yeah, I had a great time.
So Matt, we should talk about how because you can relieve stress. Do you want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, you can. So what's interesting is so we talked about how dangerous and how stressful and all that. What is interesting about the Aliens mechanic is it actually has a very, you don't have a lot of hit points, right? But it's very easy to get them back. So I kind of feel like their hit points represent that, from the action movies. Oh, it's just a flesh wound kind of thing, right? If you take too many of those, you're dead, right? Yeah. So you can die fairly quickly, but you can also recover very quickly. So what they didn't want is like, all right, you went through this scene, you got busted up, now you're going to spend a week at the inn resting. No, there's none of that. The pace of the game doesn't allow for that. So you can rest and heal, but you can also have certain talents and stuff that allow you to heal. So I'll just use my character from Destroyer of World had something called like banter, where they just, when people take downtime, they're the one who's always telling the story like, oh, back when I was, I used to, and it kind of like puts people at ease, and it allows them to regain, instead of 1 point of stress, they can gain 2 points of stress. So you can, if you get a chance to take a breath, take a few seconds, you can kind of get yourself back into the fight, right? And it really depends on the pace of the game. If you gave people too much time, then they could just sit around and kind of heal back up, and it's like, oh, we're all completely good again. And so I think part of the challenge as a GM is, if you want that experience, you give people a little moment to catch their breath and not teeter on disaster, but maybe not let them get all the way into a completely safe space. Now, as role players, you could choose to ignore that. And I don't know if Nathan was, so one of our role players, after an unfortunate incident with some friendly fire, his character actually gained stress whenever my character used the banter skill.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I was responsible for the friendly fire, but so that was a role playing choice. But
I had nothing to do with it. So that was totally that other player.
Yep. The game also uses, I think every character has like an item that means something to them. Maybe it's a locket, a letter from someone or something. Yeah. You can also use those items in downtime to help recover from stress as well. So there are mechanics to reduce the stress. And I think it's really the GM and the players, kind of what kind of pace they want to set and where they want the players to kind of stay or be at. You have a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, I like that. And because, there are those moments in horror movies, though, too. There are the moments where they get a moment to relax, where they get to recover, whether it be like before a final stand or anything like that. And so it does make it more cinematic. And it's good to have rest. It's a high stakes stress this entire time. Even from like, even if it wasn't beneficial mechanically, it's also good just for the players to like give them a moment to breathe. Like, okay, you can take a moment, and having it actually be abilities that you can, connect with roleplay too, I think is really genius, because then that's another chance to expand on a player, or not a player, on a character. You get a chance to, who is this person? What kind of stories would they tell? Have that be a fun moment. I like that.
Yeah, Matt and Malcolm were both pretty good at coming up with weird oddball stories on the
Stories,
fly.
yeah. You gotta come up with something. Yeah, and well, Alien has a few unique mechanics that you don't always find in role-playing games. So in a lot of games, you have players can charm a monster or command a monster to do something, or vice versa. You have a monster can enchant like a player. It's very few games have mechanics where players can actually make another player do something. And what is interesting is, and that can also be kind of controversial, but the Aliens game actually has a talent. There's a command skill, right? That like, so the sergeant, or if you have the command skill, you can shake somebody. So you have your panic roll. You can actually go into a panic, right? And you can have someone who can use their command, or I can't remember the skill, to get somebody, command to get out of that panic condition. And they don't lose all their stress, but they can kind of function, because sometimes you just, people who just in a total panic roll into a ball and they can't do anything. Yeah, so the commander has a role. Yep, commander has a role like, hey, get in there, Marine, or whatever they, yell. And but there's also a talent, which Kupo's sergeant actually had, which I thought was interesting. It actually allows you to roll and be able to tell a player what to do. So we had a couple times where the sergeant wanted us to take a course of action, but somebody wanted to do something else. And it actually came up a couple times in our current one that we're releasing. And I thought it was interesting, because that's kind of usually kind of a that's not done in games, but it does give the if you're playing that kind of game, like a game like the Colonial Marine games, it is an interesting thing, like, that you can pull out if you're the leader, kind of, hey, this, I mean business, this is an order. So again, an interesting mechanic. Some people may like it, some people may not, but it was, for us, for like role playing, it was probably also the only way Kupo could keep us all in line.
Yeah.
And there's a thing with Free League games too that I've noticed, that there's usually like a manipulation skill, and it's manipulation, not mind control. It's you're trying to convince somebody of something, and I think in all the ones I've read, you can succeed in your manipulation role to kind of coerce someone, but that other person, whether it's an NPC or whomever, has a choice. They can either do what you want them to do, or they can attack you.
Yeah. Oh.
so that's like attack. So if you are trying to convince, like if a Marine's trying to convince a scientist to do something, the scientist really doesn't want to do it, they don't have to follow that order. They can try to punch the Marine or whatever. Yeah. So I think it's kind of interesting. I think I saw that in Twilight 2000, and maybe the Forbidden Lands too. I'm not sure. But yeah. I know it's at least in those two.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether or not that's in Vaesen or not, because that's the one Free League game, or the one specific like Year Zero engine game that I've read fully through. And I don't know if it's in the other ones. It probably is also in that one, since they are, variations of the same system. And the thing is, it is a really tricky topic, because a lot of people are like, I want to have the agency for my character. Right. I want to decide if I want to do something. Yeah. And so I think that's that comes down to like, hey, everyone at the table, are you okay with this? Is this a okay thing to have in play? If there's a moment where my character wants all of you to run away, and I use this command to make you all run away, would that be fine? And that's like, it all comes down to communication on that front, making sure everything's cool. But I think it's definitely a really fascinating mechanic, and I would definitely play with it. because it is those moments, and it shows how impactful that role is too. You know, you are the sergeant, you are the commander. Like you are the one that people go to and listen to, and it shows. I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, I think it's I like to lose control a little bit. For me, that's fun. It's not fun for everybody, but I'm willing to, especially with like people I've played with for like 35, 40 years. I'm totally willing to like, okay, I'm going to trust them, and it's part of the game. I'm just going to give up. I'm totally fine with giving up some agency just to see what happens. You know.
Yeah.
I also like to run straight into traps, because traps are there. Traps are not really traps unless they go off. So, so that's just my general play style.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And you know, that person if that person's going to use that ability, they have an idea, they have a plan, they have a direction they want to take it. You know, that's just another tool basically for them to bring it in that direction. You know, let's see what happens when we all run away. You know, obviously, talk about it at the table, but I think it's actually a really cool mechanic. I know Monster of the Week, I'm currently playing, that has like a manipulate someone mechanic where you know, they have rules for talking to an NPC, and they have rules for talking to an actual player. And when it comes to talking to a player and like their character, they have a whole thing along the lines of, if they decide to do it, you gain XP, or, you know, you get a reward. If they don't do it, then either nothing happens or they get something for it. So like still lets there be that choice, and it's not really punishing on either end, but it lets you have that moment of like, here's what I want to do, here's my plan, here's what I want you to do. Like, it lets you have that moment. Doesn't take away the agency, but I could even still see it work of, you know, that they do it. It's just, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting when TTRPGs start playing in those mechanics, you know, when it comes to forcing people to do stuff, because it is different when it's like a monster, because that's like, you know, that's the GM playing the monster, you know, there's roles against that. But when it's like, you know, you're only playing one character and the other person's only playing one character, and you have that, it's interesting. No, that's cool. I want to think about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different types of role playing games, and sometimes it's fun to just do a dungeon crawl and just okay, there's an orc shaped bag of hit points over there. I'm going to go whack it with a stick.
Yeah,
and that's a totally valid way to play, and super fun, and you don't have to really think about, oh, what about the orc's family, and you know.
Bringing more morality to it and all of that.
Yeah, which is also good, and so you know, so by having these horror games and games where there's you know, moral gray areas and is super fun also. So I that's, I think, part of the draw of some of these darker games is kind of, you know, dipping my toes in maybe not being so you know, such a great guy that I am in my real life. So
it's allowing him to be the person he wants to be, without the shackles of society, laws. No, it's true. It's funny. I'm running my first family game, and I am actually sort of 5Eing. I know this is sort of off topic, the old Keep on the Borderlands module, and I am editing parts of it where, you know, because in the original there's like, oh, you walk in, there's 5 male orcs, 4 female orcs, and 8 children, and I'm like, nah, I'm just not gonna have any kids. It's just gonna be a few orcs, right?
Yeah.
Because my kids will never attack. If I go, there's children in there, they'll be playing with them. They won't. They're not gonna. Right, they're not good. It's gonna be the end of the battle right there. So yeah, I think having it a little bit lighter is fine. But yeah, so, you know, and I think as playing in a game like Aliens, you know, you can play it as. I think this particular group is a more stand-up group of characters in our most recent one. Whereas I think our first one had a couple real kind of we had a couple degenerate characters. Well, one of the characters I think is a drug addict who just keeps getting worse and worse throughout the entire thing, right? So you have some real flawed characters in there, but I think our most current session were a little more stand up people.
Yeah, this is still a pretty funny show, but it's definitely a lot less slapstick than most of our stuff. So it was different. It's good to mix things up every once in a while.
Because we're afraid to roll the dice.
I don't want to get stabbed in the head, please. Thank you. No, I think that's just the thing too. When it comes, that's what I mean, that's the big reason why I do love that there are so many TTRPGs of like, you can dive into any of these and get a different experience. It's just depending on what you want to play. If you want to play something that's going to be more comedy and fun and slapstick, yeah, go for it. And you can even do that with something more serious, but you're all coming into the idea of like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and having the option to dungeon crawl and having the option to have political, like fantasy stuff and having the option of like a million different things lets you explore it and have a great time.
Yeah.
I love it. And so a little bit, I guess, more on topic, of Alien. You did mention that, there's the whole recovering and being able to recover hit point. How does the combat system work in Alien? Because I know a lot of other Free League games use like the card initiative and stuff like that. Does it follow that same idea?
Same idea, and really, if you've played Vossen, it's the same thing. It's if you add your attribute to your skill, you roll all those dice, and you count all the sixes. As you just need one for a success. That's what I'm saying. They do add a little more tactical stuff, not as much as Twilight 2000, but there are, like, if you have cover, because you make an attack roll, and if you're getting shot at or attacked, you make a defense roll for your armor to, I guess, soak some of that damage. And there are things that can add to or take away from how many dice you roll. So if someone's, farther away, you roll fewer dice. If someone's shooting at you and you've got cover, you add more dice to your armor roll. But generally, things only go up and down like one or two dice for the most part, until you get to the stress. And like I said, stress rolls add to everything. And if you do roll a facehugger while you're shooting automatic, you run out of ammo, because otherwise you don't even count ammo. Just only time you change ammo is when you roll a facehugger.
Yeah, and I like that because that's one less thing to worry about. Like, even though that there can be that tactical, like, stressful element of I only have so much ammo and I have to be careful with it. Making it tie into the stress and panic instead of like, that moment you run out of ammo, that's terrifying.
Right, because it's not because it's that unplanned, right? Because it's not I'm counting my number of shots and I got to spend an action this round, right? It's you're shooting and suddenly click, right? It's like that awful.
So you have to take your time to change out the magazine, and that could be the time where you get your face hugged or whatever. So,
and it's the same mechanic for support equipment too. So one huge iconic device in the Alien world is the little sonar, the motion detector, right? This little thing they pull out the screen. That's why it's great because so when you activate certain pieces of equipment like that, you make a power roll. So again, it's not like, you have 10 rounds you can use this. Every time you make a power activation, I think if you fail, you get a face hugger, right? Then you lose one. You lose one power, right?
So you start out with like 5, and then so it gets a little scary. Because
again, it's the consequence. So now it's like, you're like, oh, I'm just going to leave it on all the time. Well, you have to keep making rolls, right? So you're only using it when you think you really want to use it, because there's always a risk of it costing. And especially when you get down to those last couple, it's like, am I picking the right moment to use this? Did I choose to not use it and we got ambushed and killed? Or did I use it too many times? And because of that, I didn't have it when I needed it. So again, stress, right?
Yeah,
your equipment, your equipment is stressful.
Everything in this game, stress. All the time. No, I like that. And that's actually when I played Dragonbane, that was something I really enjoyed with like the torches and the lanterns and stuff like that. Is that, over time as you use them, could be randomly throughout, or when you actually, like, let's say you use a torch to hit something, you roll and see if it stays lit. And so it does add that extra level of stress and being more careful with what you're doing. Like, it's all decisions. Like, that's what I feel like Free League comes down to, is it's all decisions on whether or not it's a good idea to do something.
So like you said earlier, consequences, which is one of my favorite words. You'll find out that you're really not wanting to roll all the time, and as a player and as a GM, you don't want to make them roll all the time, because that really, I think, it slows things down. And you really only want to make them roll when there's a risk of a negative or super positive consequence. So because for most things, like if I'm running, like a generic fantasy game, and there's like 5 players, and there's somebody hiding. If all 5 players are going to make a perception check or whatever, somebody's going to make it. Yeah. So why have them roll at all? You've just wasted everybody's time. You say, okay, you see a shadow over by that tree. So that's kind of the style that they're pushing you towards, is that if it's not a super consequence, then just they succeed. Let them succeed. It's not going to change anything. It's only when that, if there's like a major ambush or something like that, and then you limit, who can roll that. You don't let everybody roll. You focus on the people with the best observation and let that person roll. And one thing I like to do also is, with these horror games, sometimes you want to make them roll when there's nothing there.
Yeah. I mean, there could be, though. Like, that's the thing. They don't know. No, but I like what you said with that, of, just having the best people roll for it. Because in my mind, when you're picking a class or a career or whatever that version is in the game that you're playing, you're deciding what you specialize in. And so let's say D&D, people love going to high wisdom character, super high perception. That is what they're specializing in. So give them the opportunity to shine in those moments. Like, okay, you are the one who's going to roll, and not making it everyone. And then because you could have the moment where the person who has only like a +1 gets a 20, and it's like, oh, I can see everything. I'm God. And that character who even is still really good at it could still fail. It's still, the risk there, and that's why you're having them roll. But I like giving them those moments of like, because you're good at this, you get the chance to roll it. You are the one who gets the spotlight here.
Yeah, and it's the exact opposite for stealth. Because not everybody is stealthy.
Exactly.
So if you want, if you've got somebody that's a stealthy character, maybe they go out ahead and they have their stealth roll, but the rest of the party, if they have some noisy people, you make the person with the lowest stealth make that roll for that group.
Yep.
Because then that adds to the actual player's stress level. Because if they only have like 1 or 2 dice, they're not trained in it. They're gonna be, and then that may lead them to pushing the roll, and it's just the whole thing just cascades from there into a whole comedy of errors sometimes, which is I love.
Which are so fun to play out and so fun to see happen. Like, oh, you keep pushing it and it doesn't succeed, and it's like, oh no, I was trying so hard. And so actually, I am curious, is there a limit to how much you can push the roll? Like, can you only do it one time? Or is it...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can't push it if you rolled a face hugger.
Mm-hmm. I like that. You know, you're panicked. You're not
Well,
having a good time.
there are some talents that let you push like a strength roll, I think, one additional time.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe for a couple of the other attributes also. But so there are some special talents that allow you to push more than once.
Yeah, I like
and,
that.
and that's you could always attempt something depending on what the action is. It's the GM can often decide, like if you're trying to climb a wall and you fall, after you push, you fall.
Mm-hmm.
You can get back up and try to climb the wall again. Then
Yeah.
you have a new check, and then you can push that roll. There might be certain things where if you fail miserably, it might be like trying to pick an electronic lock or something. The GM might say, well, that door, that's now seized. You fried it out.
Yeah,
you can't try that again. So, yeah, but in one particular try, you get one push.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that does help with like... No, I do like that. Like if it is something you can try again, obviously you can, try it again, push it. But that's gonna again give you more stress though. So it is a choice. Do I try again? Is getting over this wall worth it enough to get stressed out and potentially roll a face hugger? You get higher chances of that as it goes up. So it's again all just these little decisions that are insanely stressful. No, this is... I like that. I like it all a lot. And so I think, though, we are getting a bit close to the end here. I do want to cover a bit of like, do you have any advice for people who would like to run Alien? And, is there like, hey, running it this way is super helpful, or here's some tips on how to run it in a way that will be fun?
Yeah, just a lot of stuff I mentioned earlier, like getting their buy-in, just encouraging them to push their roles, encouraging them to take risks, faking them out with scary things that are harmless, not letting them get too comfortable. Like Matt was saying earlier, that let them kind of clear off like a stress point or two, but as soon as they feel safe, it's time to kind of like throw something in the mix to get them moving again. So, and with the books themselves, if you're running like a published cinematic scenario, I would take lots of notes, because like these books are beautiful, the art's beautiful, but sometimes the bits and pieces that you're looking for, they're in different sections. I noticed when I was running the Shore of Worlds, what bogged me down sometimes was just having to flip through the book and, okay, stuff that's in this room is referenced in a couple of different parts of the book. So kind of knowing where you're going and just rewriting it by hand, like in Notepad or OneNote or a piece of paper or something. So you have kind of the, what all your references are, or just like reading the adventure several times, which I'm averse to doing. I'm more of a
do your homework, Nathan.
Be a better GM is
that's
on the
right.
list. Is to be a better GM.
Take it seriously, man.
But definitely look through it, and like if they're going to be what area they're going to be, just make sure you have everything laid out, because there'll be references to like if there's like radiation in an area, that it might not mention that in the actual description for the room, but it might be mentioned earlier in that chapter. So just that kind of stuff. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think also I agree with what Nathan said earlier. I think the game is probably best played cinematically. So I think that's another thing when you're having the conversation with the group, say, hey, this is a little tougher game. This is a horror game. Death comes easy. But just say, look, we're going to play this, like one story at a time. So pretend like we're hit and play on the, the stream. I'd be like, hit and play on my VCR, and get the old timey going. But but kind of setting that stage too, because I do know for, again, we have people in our group, if you play D&D, they'll show up with a first level character that had 40 years of backstory, and you know, so don't fall in love with your first alien character, right? Just play it like it's a movie. And if you kind of go in there knowing that, this is a horror movie, not everybody gets to the end. It probably paces itself better, because you run the risk if it's like, oh, we're going to do a campaign and I want to run these characters and people are going to get invested in them. And then they're going to pull a card where they got a spike through their head and they're dead. Right. And that's going to be very jarring. And I think just setting yourself up for that cinematic horror experience is a way to get yourself in the right mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when they have these tragic deaths, if you can make it epic, make it epic, make it memorable, describe in all the best
great
gory
detail
that you can manage. All that is fun and is definitely like a crowd pleaser around your table. Also, I want to mention too, if you're making characters instead of using the pre-gens, I like making them all together. Because that's where you can kind of work out who the buddies are, who the rivals are, and you kind of play off each other for agendas and things like that. So I definitely like kind of making the characters together.
Yeah, collaborative character creation, one of my favorites. No, I love that. And I love what you also said specifically about the pre-written, scenarios and modules. In like even taking that approach of like writing it down, taking notes and reading through the areas, like that's just good advice for any pre-written scenario that you run. Because I D&D modules can be a mess of like where each thing is and how it's like you flip through the entire book, I that's just awesome advice. I haven't run an actual module, so I haven't experienced having to jumble everything together, but I will remember that though if I ever do it.
Yeah, they've really changed. They've gone from these little, 20-page booklets to these 200-page books. It's I kind of miss the old ones that were short and sweet.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a whole conversation that could happen about modules, but I think that's probably
next time on how not to be a GM with Nathan.
No, I love that. But no, this has been great. Thank you guys for coming on and talking about Alien with me, because this has been fantastic. And of course, now I want to play it so bad. And it's just, it's digging me deeper into the TTRPG. I'm sure they appreciate it. But this was great.
They've been really good to work with. A lot of support and access to Thomas and Andrew and a lot of the people that design their games. We're probably going to hopefully talk to some more of them later this month and next month. So we really appreciate the support they've given us. We appreciate being able to come on your show and talk to you about our favorite stuff with you. This is
absolutely.
This is really cool, and I'm glad I blocked my calendar for a little while today to do this.
I'm so glad as well, because I was as soon as like I did see that you guys were in the alien stuff, I'm like, I know, like I need to, like this needs to happen. We need to get into this, because like again, it's just I love all the Free League games, but like that one does stick out as like it feels just it just stands out. I don't know. There's something about it.
Watch Alien and watch Aliens. Watch the first two.
I will. It is on the list. I am writing it down.
Very, very different movies. But
yes,
it's one of the few times where a sequel holds its own.
Mm-hmm.
They're completely different. They'd be if you could run one or the other, and they're completely different games. But remember it is the 70s and the 80s, so it's a little little bit dated.
Yeah,
of course. No, I love Just very quick. I love that they have those different styles of play baked into the system too. That you can follow something that's closer to the first Alien, this one that you can follow closer to the second Alien, be more cinematic, be more campaign style, progression over time. Like, it's so interesting. And that's another thing that I think makes it stand out, is that it has all of these options that still fits within the same idea and franchise and IP and all of this. And it works, or at least from what you guys say, it works. No,
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, yeah, no. It's been. I think it's the number. It's the most game. It's the game we've played the most in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm. That says something too.
Yeah, and we've played a lot of games. It's just this one. We keep coming back to it.
Mm-hmm. It's that cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, if you're listening to this episode and Alien sounds awesome, just go check out Free League Store and look at all their games. But, seriously consider checking out Alien and getting it for yourself. Getting it from the actual store. You get the physical book. They also have the PDFs, just the plain PDFs, available there too. But if you get the physical book there, you get the PDF as well, which makes it easier for everyone who plays online. Because it's just like, hey, here's the PDF, guys. It's like, I don't have to worry about trying to screen share or anything like that. It's great. But no, seriously, check out Alien and consider playing it yourself, especially if you want to play something sci-fi horror, or you just like love the Alien franchise and you want to play in that world. Do it, because it's cool as hell. And I think as like kind of the final, I have like one final question for both of you guys, and then we'll wrap up. And then we'll wrap up into you guys saying where people can find you again, and we'll be done. But the final question is I would like to hear both of your responses here. Why do you love Alien RPG specifically?
Are you pointing to me? Okay. So I think this is, so I got two answers. One is, I think Free League has masterfully positioned itself by grabbing up these stories that have been parts of people's lives, right? So we all watched, like, when we were growing up, Alien and Aliens, like, that's super ingrained, right? And the thing they're doing with like Blade Runner, right? Twilight 2000, all these different IPs they're grabbing, these are all cultural icons, right? That there's, lots of, so one, I like to just be able to, same reason I like to play D&D. I love, Tolkien and Middle Earth. Now I get to be there, right? So I get to be in like a really super cool setting, right? And that's fun as a role player, right? To go, what would I do? And then I would have to say that it is the stress mechanic. And again, it's not the only Free League game that has stress. So Twilight 2000 has stress, but it is not. It's a much simpler version. They really put a lot of time to flesh out the stress mechanic in Alien, and I think it's probably. It definitely makes it the most. It's definitely the kind of the jewel of the mechanics for me in that system. So,
yeah, I love that. Amazing, Nathan.
I just want to punish my friends. And Alien is the perfect.
That's a valid reason.
Yeah, all the times they made fun of me growing up. I just want to. Kill their characters, cut off their limbs. Yeah, it's just payback. Cover them with acid. It just like brings me so much joy.
See, for us it's entertainment. For him, it's therapy.
Yeah.
But no, but really, it's just the. I kind of play the evil edgelord GM role pretty well, but I like. Putting players in situations where they feel, if they make it to the end, they feel like they've earned it. If they survive, that they've gone through the gauntlet and they've succeeded. And there's like this deep breath at the end. It's like, oh, what just happened to me? And in a game where I can make them kind of go through that and have like. A little bit of real life safe stress, I think it is good for me, because there's just a lot of games out there and they're fun where there's just where you're always a hero and there's no question that you're gonna succeed or win or do whatever you set out to do. But if I can make you kind of just like not sure for hours and hours and hours on end of what's going to happen to you, by the end, you should feel pretty awesome. Or maybe your second or third player will feel pretty awesome.
But whoever you get out of it with.
Yeah, but that's that whole journey and just kind of it's really I think I'm really jaded and things need to be a little bit more extreme for me to like feel anything. So this really kind of brings it to me.
There's so many levels. There's so many levels to this explanation.
That's so fair though. Like I get it, It's its own release. It's its own like I can get, it's something about putting your players and friends through terrible situations. I'm always like, I want my players to succeed, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna pull back my punches. Like, like, yeah, I like your character, but like, you're still gonna die if you decide to be dumb. Like, these are the rules that we're playing by.
Yeah, you ever watch Die Hard?
I have. It's been a while.
Yeah, but like John McClane at the end, he's like crawled through broken glass, and he's limping and he's bleeding. Like I want everybody to feel that way at the end of one of my games. They're all John McClane, and they've all been through something. So
yeah, been through.
That's why they don't let me run anymore. But,
you've been banished.
Yeah, it's that, and don't miss a session. Things happen to your character while you're gone. It's never good.
Oh, good to know. No, this has been though seriously awesome. Thank you guys so much. And of course, we'll have like this final thing at the end of where people can find you. Of course, all the links will be in the description of this episode, but where can people find you? Where can people watch your shows and all of that cool stuff?
Yep. So the AARPG is pretty much everywhere. YouTube, search for us on your favorite podcatcher. The AARPGs.com if you want to look at our bios or look at our merch. And all the social medias, which will be in the show notes. That's a good place for those.
Too many of them to list.
Yeah. So on our YouTube has probably the most stuff on it. We have a nice interview with Andrew Gaska, who wrote the Alien RPG. We have on our podcast version, we have our original Alien shows, and we're starting to add them to with no video to our YouTube. We're currently on episode about to release episode 9 of our Alien Arcturine Apocalypse game on YouTube and podcast, and that's going to be 14 episodes total. And we've also got Twilight 2000 on there. We've got Battle Lords. We've got some D&D. We've got Death in Space. We've got Mothership. And we're going to have Dragon Bane probably late December, early January. We're starting that, and that's going to be a much longer run.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting.
How many episodes in are we?
Well, we've got 12 episodes recorded.
Yeah,
already. So
oh man,
that's like 6 months worth of content for us.
Yeah, and just a foot stomp too. We talked a lot about Aliens, but we also mentioned Free League a lot. So if you check out our interviews, we have interviews on Blade Runner, on Twilight 2000, I think, and just Forbidden a bunch of other Forbidden Lands. So we have a lot of and not just Free League too. So we've got a lot of good, both a lot of indie creators out there. So if you're interested in different games and you kind of want to peel back the curtain and see what the writers and the creators are talking about it, we got a good list. Hopefully growing.
Woo! Hopefully. Yeah, no, that is awesome. I definitely recommend checking those out because those are always really fun interviews of like actually talking to the creators where it's like, okay, it's awesome. what's the thought process behind this? Let's get into it. But no, that's amazing. But I love doing these as well with people who just love the game so much, where it's like, yeah, it speaks for itself. It's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone, you can find AARPG. Woo, I said it. On all of those socials and all of those places. Again, the links will be in the description below, along with I will have the link for Nathan's specific Twitter, and I don't know, Matt, if you also have a separate Twitter that you would like link.
I let him run the AARPG account.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I gotta keep him on a short leash.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, so all of that will be in the description, so that you guys can find them, and you can watch all of the awesome content and the awesome interviews, because I will definitely be checking out more of those interviews soon, because I just like knowing about games. But yeah. Awesome.
Thanks
So
for
I
having us.
think absolutely, thank you for coming on. This was an absolute blast. And yeah, I think we are at the end. So thank you everyone for listening, and thank you Nathan and Matt for coming on.
It's just doing video. I know.
Yeah,
It's really good for the audio part right here, right?
Yeah, silence.
Yeah.
We're all waving. That's it.
Exactly. Bye.